Zion's transformation, center uncertainty, and Jordan Poole's role, the three burning questions that could make or break the season. Let's answer them in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, here with y'all on this Monday, and we are going to look at the three biggest questions, or three burning questions, maybe not the actual biggest questions, that could make or break the Pelicans season here, and we're going to answer them all. We're going to look at, is this Zion Williamson for real? Who's the starting center? And what's Jordan Poole's role exactly going to be? We're going to cover it all in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the number one Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well, and become an everydayer. It means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. And don't forget, you can watch us on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network every single weekday at 10:30 a.m. So let's get into some of the biggest questions here. The first and foremost one being, is this Zion Williamson for real? Is this Zion Williamson for real? He looked incredible at Media Day. This is what you've waited for with Zion Williamson, this version to see. The guy that comes into training camp preseason actually in shape. That's what we've wanted to see for a while. Committing to working out in the not working out, he works out in the off season, but just doing all of the right things in the off season, which, look, we can safely say is not something that he has done. I think even he would admit some of that. And in some of my conversations on Media Day, I think people have kind of said he's needed to do things differently, and he finally is. But feels like we've been here before, right? It's year whatever it is. It's year 7 of Zion Williamson. We've seen this before, and it hasn't always gone well. Except here's the thing, right? So that's what people ask me, like, is this for real? Is this when it clicks for Zion? Is this when it's going to be different? That's kind of what the number one question I've been getting for the past week now is, he looks good, but haven't we been here before? And I want to answer it this way. We have not actually been here before. I know everyone's using, is it Lucy from Peanuts, like pulling the football out from Charlie Brown, or just any of those things? There's the Arrested Development meme of like, it hasn't worked for those people, but maybe it'll work for us, whatever it is, right? We actually haven't been here before. We actually have not. Zion has not showed up looking like this in this good shape ever. I don't think. Maybe his rookie year, but that was just a very different version of Zion Williamson. This is not something that we have seen. And so when you look for words or versus actions, and Brian Windhorst was on ESPN talking about Zion Williamson after Media Day being like, look, these are just words. There need to be actions that follow it up. I actually think we have seen some actions because we haven't seen him actually show up like this. He's looked good before. He hasn't looked like this to the point where you could almost argue like has he lost too much weight? We're not getting into that. We ain't doing that. Don't worry. But the fact that he actually showed up ready to go is different than it's been in the past. That's an action. It would have been one thing if he said, like, I got to play, I got to be consistent, I got to take better care of my body, and then he didn't show up looking like he had done that. But this does look like a different Zion Williamson. And simply him looking different means you did some work, right? Like, you don't just lose weight without putting the work in if you're an NBA player. So he has done what he needs to do. Is the cardio there? We'll find out. Is he ready to play more than 30 minutes per game? We'll find out. But right now, the early signs are good. And when you tie it into the end of last season, when he was in the best shape of his career, again, albeit on a minutes restriction, but playing the best basketball he's ever played, if you can get a couple more minutes out of him playing at that level, that version of Zion Williamson is a top 20 player in the NBA. So when you factor in how he looks now, plus the end of last season, yeah, that's different. Like there is something different about it all of a sudden. So I think you're starting to see some actions kind of back this up. The biggest thing, the everydayers have heard this, but I'm going to keep hammering this point home until we, get to the start of the regular season, is he tried on defense last year. Players tend to be, you're an offensive guy, you're a defensive guy. Some are both, right? But those offensive guys tend to take plays off defensively because they're conserving their energy for offense. Some of the defensive guys don't do a ton on offense because they're conserving their energy for defense. So you kind of can be a little bit boom or bust at times. Not always, but sometimes. Drew Holiday was a little bit like that, depending on what his role with the team was that game. Zion trying on defense while taking on what he did offensively as a high usage guy is a very encouraging sign to the shape that he was in at the end of the season. He played 30 games last year, but it could have been closer to 50, 55, somewhere in that range. So it would have looked better potentially. That's all encouraging. He did all of that at the end of the season that we forget about because they shut him down for tanking purposes and because the team was garbage and most people just weren't watching them at that point in time. But then he comes into the season in shape. So you start to feel that things are different. He didn't need to try hard defensively in a lost season like that. Could have just put up offensive numbers, done all that, and would have been fine, and no one would have said a thing. But he committed on that side of the ball in a way that we hadn't seen from him before, and basically put up like career high numbers across the board in fewer minutes than he'd ever played. That's, very encouraging. He averaged more basically a block per game, which is a career high for him, was 0.9, so block per game, on fewer minutes than he basically has ever played. That's a really encouraging sign. He set a career high in steals per game, 1.2, playing basically the fewest minutes that he's ever played. All of that, again, is a highly encouraging thing to see from him here. So I love that. The fact that he was that engaged on the defensive side of the ball, that's a mindset shift. Zion is not known as a defensive player. But if he can just be average there, and he was better than just average last year, this team looks different. So I think when you see all that, and if the question is this for real with Zion Williamson, where he is right now with where he played last season, yeah, it feels different. It looks different. And there's actions that say it's different. Now, the true test to me is actually going to be in preseason. I'm going to get in some trouble on all of this. Zion played in one preseason game last year, I think, right? One preseason game. That's what we saw from him, and then he shut it down. I've been told, previous regime here, that he was just like, I don't need to play anymore in preseason and just stop playing, essentially, right? And if and they don't need to play much in preseason. You don't want to risk an injury in preseason and things like that. If he's like, yeah, I'm going to play in every preseason game, or maybe until no one plays in the third preseason game, that also says something. If he's playing minutes there, logging those minutes and wanting to do work and stuff that doesn't matter, that is highly encouraging for a mindset shift. Now, if he doesn't play, it might not have anything to do with him. It might be the approach the team's taking, what have you. But that's definitely something to that I'm watching. Does he play in these meaningless games? They're doing these exhibition games in Australia this week. We get actual basketball this week, which is cool. Friday and Saturday here. I wouldn't expect to see him play a ton in those, but get some run against the Houston Rockets in when they're back in the United States. We'll see. If he's playing in those, that's a very encouraging sign, I think, of him wanting to put in the work and kind of do all of the right things. NBA players tend to go through shoot-arounds, warm-ups before games. Zion doesn't always do that. When we get to the regular season, is he going to be going through his pregame routine and warming up with, an assistant coach or not? That's something that's going to tell me a lot about him. If he wants to do that, that's putting more work, more wear and tear on your body, exerting just energy, even if it's not anything that serious. But if he's doing that, that kind of tells you a lot about his mentality. Those are the things, by the way, this is inside only, you're only getting here on Locked On Pelicans, that I'm going to really be looking for to see if this is real. But so far, yeah, things feel good. And that's the biggest game changer for this team. If Zion plays, this team has a chance. I'm not going to say they're going to be incredible, but I think they can be good. But if he doesn't play, it's going to be an uphill battle, certainly, at that point. But if he's playing, a paradigm shifter. You can't overstate it enough. If Zion last year was like straight vengeance is what we're out for. Are you actually going to do that this year? Because this is the year where it looks like it. That's what's so exciting to see. And that's why coming out of Media Day, you've got to feel pretty hyped about Zion Williamson. And whatever it took to get him there, as long as you figure it out, would have liked it sooner rather than later. But if we're there now, you can't change the past, can't look at the past. Go and do it. And it's starting to feel pretty good. There's still some boxes we need to see checked coming up. Again, preseason, the warm-ups and all that. But if he starts doing all that, that's a highly encouraging sign that things are actually different this time. Let's keep with the front court. Who's starting at center for the New Orleans Pelicans? Yves, Missi, Kevon, Looney, someone else? Let's take a look at that. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by 5-Hour Energy. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5-Hour Energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors, and each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee plus B vitamins and nutrients with zero sugar and zero crashes. I love about how portable they are. Big taste, tiny shot. You can take it anywhere and get the boost you need. When I play golf early in the morning, I don't want to make coffee. I don't have time to stop coffee, to get coffee because places aren't even open. I can just grab one of these, boom, on the go, ready to have hopefully a good round, even though it never works out that way. I love the transfusion flavor. I love the grape flavor, but there's so many different kinds. You can find your own favorite. So enough with boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5-Hour Energy shots. Get the favorites you love or be bold. Try something new. You can get them in-store and online at 5hourenergy.com or at Amazon today. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well and become an everydayer. That means you listen, Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. And if you're an everydayer, let me know in the comments down below on YouTube. Don't forget you can watch us on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. It's where you watch your Pelicans play. We're there 10:30 a.m. every weekday. Really cool to be on the same channel the team is on as well. For your second listen, Saints look kind of good. Even in the loss against the Buffalo Bills, there were some moments. Ross Jackson of Locked On Saints is breaking down everything black and gold. Go make Locked On Saints your second listen today. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Another big question I get, literal big question. Who's the starting center for the New Orleans Pelicans? That answer is going to just depend on who you ask. You ask other media people, they might say Kevon Looney, they might say Yves, Missi. It's kind of up in the air is who the starting center is going to be. Missi at Media Day himself said it would be decided in training camp, that maybe nothing has been set yet. I had a one-on-one conversation with Kevon Looney that'll be posted this week. He had said he had spoken to the staff about his role as well and that nothing was defined just yet. It's really going to come down to who makes the most sense for this team. And honestly, both the players I think are pretty close, but there's a couple of nuances and little differences to them, I think, that might be the differentiator. I want to go to something that Jordan Poole said at Media Day, not in my one-on-one interview with him, but when he was at the podium there. He made a comment on screens that he hasn't had a good screen in 2 years, so he's really excited to reunite with Kevon Looney. Looney's a pretty good screener. In limited minutes last year, he set a number of screens. There's a stat called a screen assist. That's when a big man sets a screen for somebody else that leads to that player scoring. It doesn't count as an assist, in terms of passing the ball, but that screen helped them score, created some space or gave them the movement they needed, whatever it might be. Screen assist is an important stat for big men. If you look at it on a per minute basis, this is a way just to kind of equalize for different roles, different amount of minutes people play. Looney had a screen assist every 0.1, he had 0.16 screen assists per minute. That was actually one of the higher ones in the NBA. Yves Missi was at 0.13 screen assists per minute. So they're really, really close there. If you look at it in terms of a per game basis, so this is guys with fewer minutes going to have fewer opportunities to set screen assists. Missi had 3.5 screen assists per game. That's a minimum, right, of 7 points. That was actually 11th most in the league last year. That's more than Alperen Şengün, Anthony Davis, Ivica Zubac, and Miles Turner. That's a really good number for a rookie last year who was kind of thrust into a big role, trying to kind of find a way to impact the game, but was setting pretty good screens. Getting called for fouls on some too, but that's to be expected here. So they're both good screeners. And it's nice that the Pelicans at least have like two above average to good screening big men there, because they should be using those guys in all of that. You know, when you look at it here, Missi is a better rim protector than Kevon Looney is. I think not by miles and miles, but he's a better rim protector. You get more blocks from Missi than you do Kevon Looney. But Looney is the better defensive rebounder. When you look at it per 100 possessions, again, Looney didn't play nearly as many minutes as Yves Missi did. You know, per 100 possessions, Looney grabbed 11.8 defensive rebounds. Missi was 8.6. So that's a difference of 3.2. The Pelicans were one of the worst defensive rebounding teams in the league last year. They were at one point like historically bad. This is also a problem with, you know, Zion Williamson and building around him. Not exactly Zion's fault, but if you have a power forward that doesn't rebound at a above average level, it's going to make it tough to grab defensive rebound at an above average level. That's part of the problem here. It's tough to build around a big man like that. The Pelicans are going to kind of need to decide, what do you want? Do you want, you know, if the screening's all equal, do you want the rim protection? You know, do you want some scoring? Missi is probably at this point a more advanced scorer, a better scorer around the rim than Kevon Looney is. And Missi, you know, said that's the number one thing he's been working on. When asked if it was like a 3-point shot or something, he's like, no, like I got to get better around the rim. And I like that. He was not particularly great in that area last year. He did not shoot particularly well in Summer League, like 30-something%. That's not a great number for a big man, even though Summer League is not a bigs game. So I don't really read too much into center performance at Summer League. If you don't have guards that can get you the ball, what are you going to do? But for Missi, knowing he needs to improve in that area is good. If he can become, you know, a lob threat, that provides vertical spacing. Normally we think of spacing in terms of 3-point shooting, spacing the court, and we'll talk about that with Jordan Poole in the next segment, and certainly that is absolutely a thing. You also need guys that can be above the rim threats that, well, you got to stick a defender on them. If you sag off Looney to go take away a Zion drive and leave Missi down there, Zion can just lob the ball up, Missi can jump up, get it, and flush it down, and that's like the easiest 2 points you're going to get. That's called vertical spacing. You put him in the dunker spot, so immediately to the left or right of the basket in the paint, called the dunker spot. He just goes up, gets it, dunks it down. That's a very important guy to have, and Missi can really, really fill that role, I think. But Looney's the better defensive rebounder. So what are you trying to do here? You know, are you trying to terminate possessions or have a little bit more oomph on offense? You know, one of the things that I think Looney will really help Missi with is using his physicality. Looney is slightly undersized, around 6'9", but he is a physical player, y'all. He is a physical player. If Missi can learn some of that from him, Missi has a chance to be pretty good. I think he can be, you know, you don't look at him being a top 3 guy on your team, but 4th or 5th starter is at the center spot. That can work. You know, he processes the game really quickly. You see the improvements from him. If he can learn to use his size, his physicality a little bit more, that will go a long way. I do think Missi ends up starting to answer the question on opening night, because I think you're going to see some improvements from him. Playing for Cameroon was also really good for him, getting that international experience too. So I'm excited to see what Missi is going to bring to the team this year. I would not be shocked if Looney ends up starting, but I do think they're going to go with Missi first. You know, Looney's been banged up. He's been in the league for 10 years, even though he's not 30. And you can, you know, he's kind of spoken about it at times that he hasn't been the healthiest. There have been injuries and things like that. Talking to some people around the Golden State Warriors, there were like long-term concerns about his health, things like that. But, you know, when I talked to him, and again, this will be posted soon, he seemed to be feeling really good. Like kind of, you know, the best he's felt in a long time. So that's a way to, you know, really maybe help him here. And play a larger role. So I think that's something that can be exciting here when it comes to Kevon Looney. I liked that signing a lot. I think he can definitely make an impact here, but I see Missi starting. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments down below. Missi also has the size to be a good defensive rebounder. If he can use that physicality to improve in that area a little bit, that will go a really, really long way. And I think that could be really important for him here in New Orleans in his development. Coming up next, what exactly is Jordan Poole's role going to be? There's a bit of a question there. I'll throw it out there. He's really good in one area, but is that what they need him to do? That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and you're going to get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's simple. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you're going to unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. If you wanted to take the Saints plus 15.5, and you did, took the points, they still lost, but you would have won. FanDuel just makes watching football more exciting when you've got something riding on the action here. And they've got multiple ways to play. You can build parlays, you can try the player props, or even follow the live lines during games. So whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So don't wait anymore. Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. And if your first $5 bet wins, if you're a new customer, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets. Just go to FanDuel.com. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast. Please subscribe, join us on YouTube, and watch us on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. For your second listen, make it Locked On NBA Game Night. Games are about to start. We're going to be covering literally every single game across the whole preseason, regular season, postseason over on Locked On NBA Game Night. I'm back on Wednesdays on there every single day. Make sure every single week. Make Locked On NBA Game Night your second listen to keep up with the association. So what's Jordan Poole's role? Final burning question. I've gone a little bit long, so I got to do this kind of fast. Is he a lead guard? Is he your off-ball guard? He can do either. He's not the best lead guard. His skill set is maybe better with the ball in his hands rather than using him off-ball, even though he's good off-ball. It's kind of like in that middle area. Last year, Jordan Poole was a freaking flamethrower on pull-up jumpers last season. With the ball in his hands, dribbling around, pulls up, shoots. Dude from three was unreal. That is a very real threat in today's NBA. You can't sag off those guys. You've got to potentially commit two to the ball in that type of situation. If you have a guy that's an elite shooter with the ball in his hands, the most dangerous person on the court, ask any coach, man with the ball in his hand, right? If that guy's a really good three-point shooter, he's behind the three-point line, you need to defend that. However it might be. Jordan Poole, unreal from pull-up. I'll have the specific numbers. I'm waiting on some stats to come in on that. It's kind of weird. Don't worry about it. He was just near the best in the league with it. So while he can be a catch-and-shoot guy, don't you want him with the ball in his hands being that very, very real pull-up threat? And if he's that very real pull-up threat, you need to put the ball in his hands more. But that means the ball's out of Zion's hands. So you see the problem. What do you do? Yep, they'll be able to share the rock. You get a lot of possessions per game, so this is kind of a good problem to have. But if Poole's massive threat is pulling up with the ball in his hands, how do you then incorporate Zion into that? It creates space for Zion, but Poole isn't a natural, pure point guard. Is he going to be able to kind of manipulate the defense with that threat, realize what they're doing, and then make the right passes, make the right reads? I mean, he certainly can. But playmaking for others has not been his number one skill, probably not even 2 or 3 skill that he possesses. So you see kind of call it a conundrum of how to use him best. If you use him more as an off-ball guy, Zion is your point forward, is that kind of negating Jordan Poole's greatness, right? The top skill sets that he has. And the answer to that is kind of yeah. If you're a good pull-up shooter, it likely means you should be a very good catch-and-shoot guy. But again, rhythm and those type of shots and the movements you do to get into those motions are very, very different things. So it's trying to figure out how to use Jordan Poole the best. Is it with the ball in his hands? Is it more off-ball? Is it some sort of hybrid role, which is what it's likely going to be? There will be times where he's initiating the offense. There will be times when Zion is initiating the offense. There will probably be some times when Herb Jones is initiating it, along with Trey Murphy III as well. But Poole and Zion are mainly going to be your guys, at least until DeJounte Murray comes back. And we'll probably talk more about him tomorrow as we continue looking at burning questions going into actual preseason games this Friday, which is really cool. But Poole's going to be really interesting to see how exactly they use him. He does a little bit of everything really well. Do you want him with the ball in his hands being more of a straight line driver? right? If you play up on him at the 3-point line and he beats that guy, all of a sudden you're creating like a little mini fast break. You have a man advantage. You have an advantage creation situation. Advantage creator is an archetype you want to be and have at the NBA level. So is that what they're going to do? Again, you want to maximize everybody's talent here. I think I've said this before. I'm not religious here, but I know the parable of the talents, right? So it's like kind of using that. I'm not even going to try. I'm going to butcher it if I try and do that. But there's some of that in here. Right? Like you've got to make the most of what you got. And so if you're using Poole in a suboptimal role, why trade for Jordan Poole? At that point, keep CJ McCollum, except the contracts are a factor into that too. So there's also that stuff. Yeah, it's tough building an NBA team if you haven't figured that out at this point in time here. So, it's going to be interesting to see how they use Poole to try and open up the offense. He can create space for Zion as a spot-up guy, as a guy with the ball in his hands. So, it's an exciting player to have here, and they all love him already, and he's bringing the right kind of energy to the training camp practices that we've seen and everything too. So that's been really fun. But you've got to figure out how to make all these pieces work on offense. That's going to really be Willie Green's challenge. We'll probably talk more about that tomorrow too, as that's a natural segue to it now. So let's just wrap it up there. I've teased the show tomorrow that I thought of in the moment here. So that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. We'll talk more tomorrow about Willie Green, DeJounte Murray, and others as we get ready for the first preseason game on Friday and Saturday in Australia. 4 a.m. on Friday, by the way. We'll figure out how we're going to cover that. We'll figure that out. I don't entirely know just yet. So I appreciate y'all so much for listening. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. This is the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Be back with y'all tomorrow.